Well, welcome back to Olympia, your old stomping grounds. I was doing the math, 35 years or so ago you were here. What brings you to Olympia this year?
You know, I try and come and have been coming to Olympia at least one day during session every year since I was elected to the Senate 30 plus years ago. And the reason I do that is because this is where I started my career. And I know that the energy and the passion is really critical. I know that these state legislators, both in the House and Senate, are really in tune with their constituents, and it is a great way for me to hear about what's happening in Washington State, what they're working on, and how I can partner and help them out from my seat in the U.S. Senate.
Something that first brought you here to Olympia back in the late 80s was the childcare and preschool issue. Still a major issue for this state. I know the legislators here are trying to come up with more funding. What can be done for those parents who are struggling? And I mean, it was a problem in the 80s, and it's still a problem here in the 20s.
It's what motivated me to come here. I, not as a legislator or elected official, but just as a mom who got mad because the state legislature at that time decided to quit funding the preschool program that my kids were in many years ago. And I thought, this is so wrong, this is so important for us. And I came here and fought hard to reinstate a program at our community colleges for the parent-child ed program that was so critical for me and has been for so many families since then. So it's really what got me involved in politics to start with. It is why I ran for the state senate when I did many years ago, because I wanted to be here and make sure our state was investing in early childhood education in our kids. And here I am now, years later, in the U.S. Senate as Chair of Appropriations Committee, doing everything I can in the budget that we're working on right now to make sure that funding is there for childcare. So not only has this issue not gone away, but it's more intense. What I think has changed is when I was fighting for it, it was sort of the unnamed, don't talk about it issue. It was a women's issue. It was, don't tell anybody you can't find childcare because you might not get a job. Now, parents are marching on the street. Tana Sen and Claire Wilson here in the legislature are leading the charge to pass major childcare legislation. And it is a topic of conversation in the U.S. Congress in the biggest way and the first time ever.
The last time we met up with you a couple of years ago, we were talking about the Safe Banking Act. That's another problem that has not gotten any better. We're having these brazen break-ins where these pot shops are ripe for the picking because of all that cash there. Yeah. Any movement in that area? Are we going to get any help from DC solving that problem?
Look, I think this is a really critical issue. Here in Washington State and in other states where selling cannabis is legal, those stores have to be cash only because they can't access the banking system. That is unsafe for those operators, for everybody who walks into that store, and it's crazy that they can't do that. So I have been working really hard to pass what's called the Safe Banking Act to simply allow those businesses to be able to access the banking system. And we, for the first time this year, got it out of committee. I have been telling the Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, that we have got to get this passed and have been in his face how critical this is. That's the first step, and then of course to get it past the House. I think the good news that keeps me going is more and more legislators themselves in Washington, D.C. are seeing this happen in their own home states and are joining us in this effort. But we still have an uphill climb, and I will not stop fighting until we make it safe for those shops.
We'd have to go through the House, which I think, I don't have to tell you, the word dysfunctional can be thrown around, has been thrown around. Chaos. Yeah. How do you explain to constituents who are pulling their hair out when they hear about no progress on lots of issues? Is it the House's problem? Is it President Trump's involvement? We'll talk about immigration in a second, but how do you explain to your frustrated constituents that Washington, D.C. can get anything done, or in this case, can't get it much done?
So I'll tell you what I'm working on right now. So I'm chair of Appropriations Committee, and every year we have to pass our budget and the 12 years that fund all of our federal government. And last year I became chair of that committee and worked really hard to begin our work and to get our work done. What happened was the then Speaker, Speaker McCarthy, said, I'm not going to let you pass a budget until you give me a budget that cuts funding dramatically, and if you don't give that to me, I'm going to shut our economy down. And we had to get to the table, and my job is to get things done, even if I'm frustrated with the number, but to get the job done. I do not want chaos, and our country doesn't deserve chaos through a government shutdown or funding that is inadequate. So they had a budget deal. I then went to work on my committee. We passed all 12 of our appropriation bills under that agreement and those numbers, as hard as it was, in a bipartisan way in the Senate. Unfortunately, the same did not happen in the House. And not only that, they of course kicked out the speaker that made that agreement. They have a new speaker who now insists on a new agreement, which, by the way, you cannot function if handshakes and agreements aren't something that everybody stays with. You change those all the time. How do you get anything done? My answer is we need people in elected office who are willing to work hard and get the job done. We all are passionate about issues. We all go out and fight for things. But at the end of the day, you need your country to function. You need people to be able to go to the Social Security office and know that someone will be there to help them if they need it. If we have a wildfire here in Washington State, we need to know that there is a FEMA there that will help them out with the challenges that they face. We need to make sure that we have a national defense system. I can list hundreds of things that are critical. We can't make everything into a political fight. We have to agree and compromise and get things done. I'm focused on doing that, and right now we have a House of Representatives that does not have a leadership that agrees with that, and it is really challenging.
Let's talk about immigration. We heard about this package, this deal, and we're back to where we have been for decades with no deal. Can something get done here before the election?
Well, I'll tell you what happened with immigration is the president sent to Congress an emergency supplemental so that we could make sure we were doing our part as an ally with our European partners to fight the aggressive action of Putin to go in and take over Ukraine. So Ukraine funding, Israel funding, making sure that we were supporting our partners, really critical funding. And in the Senate, you need 60 votes. So we needed 9 Republicans to join us. They worked with us on that deal, helped us write it. We were ready to go to the floor, and all of a sudden they said, well, we're not going to do this unless you also change policy at the border and deal with the border issues that we have. I was frustrated with that, but we went back to the table. It took 4 months to work out a hard-fought bipartisan agreement on the border deal so we could get Ukraine funding, Israel funding, humanitarian aid for Gaza done, and several other things, and this border deal that they had put together. The minute it came out, a day later they said, nope, we're not going to let you do that. So we had to go back to the drawing boards and rewrite the emergency supplemental, which we just passed like a week ago after days of Republicans fighting us. But there were enough of them who agreed that defending our country and our position in the world was important enough, so we got the votes out of the Senate. Now that package is sitting in front of the House, and I'm not sure how they're going to take it up, but it is absolutely critical for the safety and protection of our country. So border, which is what you asked me about, got caught up in that politically, and then all of a sudden we found at the end that Republicans didn't want to solve the border crisis. They just wanted a political issue in November. How do I know that? Trump told us. He said to the Republicans, don't you vote for this. I want to campaign on it.
Doesn't President Biden have some authority to take secure efforts?
He does, but the Homeland Security and our Border Patrol have to follow the law of the land. Unless you change the laws, they really can't do the things we need to be doing today to really help people get through the asylum process faster. For example, one small part. So we have a lot of people coming across the border seeking asylum. They're in danger in their own countries. They come in, they're supposed to see a judge and be determined whether or not they are legitimate asylum seekers and can stay, or they are sent home. But because the courts are so backlogged, there is no place to get them through fast enough, so they end up in our country even though they may not qualify. It takes up to 2 years to do that right now. That's one of the things we did in our border package, was to make sure we had enough people to process them and send home the people that didn't qualify. So it takes changing the law, and it takes resources to be able to deal with the number of people coming across the border today.
I want to ask about, totally switching gears here, but something that's of interest, HighSpeed Rail. This state was hoping for a big check last year. $200 million, I think, was the hope, and Washington got $500,000. There's still efforts to get a high-speed rail. We've been talking about this long before you and I were in this great building. Will that ever happen? Will we have that speed train from Seattle to Portland or Vancouver to Portland?
I think what I think we all have to recognize is that transportation infrastructure is a huge problem with a lot of different facets, whether it's fast rail or ferries or rebuilding our roads and bridges and highways, our ports, broadband, all fall in the infrastructure category. Congress did deal with that in the last Congress with the bipartisan infrastructure law that put in place money for a large, broad spectrum. And in fact, Washington State is one of the highest recipients of the dollars coming from that, for everything from port infrastructure to the I-5 corridor down in Vancouver to Oregon, to bridges and roads being replaced. I mean, there's many, and broadband, a lot of things. But we didn't quite make it in terms of fast rail. And that has to be a partnership between communities, the state, and the federal government. And we need enough resources at the federal level to be able to help the huge demand we have in this country.
Is that something you expect to see happen while you're still in office? I mean,
you know, you never stop fighting for what you think is really important and what will really help the people that you represent. So give up is not in my vocabulary. We will keep working to try and make sure we've got the investments we need to help people.
I know you may have seen it already, but there's a statue out here that's going to be a representation of the Billy Frank Jr. statue heading to Statutory Hall eventually. You're going to be proud of the newest addition there?
I am so excited. I have met with the tribe numerous times. I've seen where it's going to go in the Capitol, and to have Billy Frank, who I knew when I was a state legislator right here, be the person who represents our state, and all he believed in and fought for and everything he accomplished for our state. It's just, I think it's just an amazing, great opportunity for our state to remind other people of our history and his accomplishments.
Don't need to remind you that it's an election year, presidential election year, not for you, but for the big office there. You've worked with Senator Biden when he was a senator for decades. Mm-hmm. You've worked with him as a president. You know this recent council report that said he called him elderly with poor memory. Does President Biden have the strength to not only deal with a campaign, but another 4 years?
I find it astonishing that people are questioning that. I've known Joe Biden for a long time. I was just with him 2 weeks ago talking about Ukraine and all of our obligations globally. I was talking with him about issues that we were trying to get through the Senate. He is absolutely on top of it, and I'll tell you what is most important to me. President Biden speaks from his heart, and he is compassionate, and he cares about people. And when he fights for something, it's because he relies on those basic values that it just is who he is, versus the other guy who is running for president for himself. Joe Biden is running for our country, and I absolutely believe he can do the job and will do an amazing job, as he always has.
I know you and your party are fearful of the other guy, Donald Trump, getting in office again. What can we expect during this campaign season to hear from you and other party leaders to get your guy back in the office?
Look, I think what's important about the election this year, in many different levels across the board, is really our democracy, who we are as a country. Are we a country that works together to elect people to help our country keep working and be representative of voices of all kinds and solve problems together? Or are we going to elect somebody who really is running for himself? And he will tell you that. I think we're a democracy and we care about people, but that really is at stake in this election.
While you're here in Olympia, do you have any good news to deliver to legislators or budget writers as they're in the final weeks of this session? Anything coming from appropriations?
Well, I am negotiating the appropriation bills right now with my House counterpart and Speaker Johnson. And we have got to get these bills done, and I have made my highest priorities two things that are critically important here in our state. One is childcare that we just talked about, making sure that we have the funds. This is an economic issue, so people can go to work and help their families and be a part of being able to be strong here and across the country. It's a huge issue. And secondly, WIC funding, which is Women and Infant and Children Program, Nutrition Program. For the first time ever, House Republicans are demanding that we cut that program by $800 million. For the first time in 50 years, telling people that if you qualify for WIC, you're going to have to get in line. We've never done that before. Feeding our kids and making sure that they have nutrition and the start that they need is a basic obligation of this country. So those are two things that impact us as a nation, but will also impact the state legislature if we don't win, because they will have to make up that shortfall.
Thank you, Senator Marie. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Thanks for making time for us.
You bet.